Hello, everyone. So I'm very happy today on my Jumping Detox interview to welcome to Linda. So how are you, Linda? And thank you to be present and on today. So you are in London and I'm in Switzerland. And how is the weather in London?
Hello, Nicholas. Thank you so much for inviting me to your exciting podcast. So I'm speaking to you from a very cold London. London is usually grey and mild, but today we have proper frost, which is nice in December running up to Christmas. So
Yeah,
trying to keep
it's
warm.
Yeah, it's Christmas time, so this is quite cool. Okay, so perhaps you see on the past few interviews that I made that I'm very focused, about heavy metals, detox, intoxications, and we have the opportunity to meet each other when I was in London and also in other conference, and I just know you about MELISA Diagnostics about this test because when I was starting my work as a consultant and nutritionist, I use this test, and I was really happy to now having you in my big family because I think you are quite very interesting and you work also. So today I wanted to have a view about your perspective about this field and also how this starts because I think that I remember that this lab was created by your mother, and yeah, just tell me how she was involved in this situation.
Absolutely. So it's quite a long story. So we'll try to keep it brief. Otherwise, we'll spend the rest of the day talking here.
Yeah.
So this is my mother, Professor Vera Statescombe, who was an immunotoxicologist at Astra Pharmaceuticals in Sweden. And she was one of the first physicians in the world to do that. So immunotoxicologist is looking at substances which may be harmful for the immune system, even in small substances. So we all know about toxic levels of metals, for example, but also we are all very different. And when it comes to immunology, then even small amounts of certain substances may be harmful for people. So we're not talking about levels here, we're talking about an individual sensitivity.
Hmm.
And at Astra, there were workers who, in the factories producing pharmaceutical drugs, would get very strange side effects. And Astra was saying, wouldn't it be nice if we had a blood test which we can test all the workers to all these substances they're exposed to. And if their immune system is reacting to one of the substances, we can just remove them from the environment, so they're not exposed to it anymore. So Vera took a test that had been around for quite a long time. It's called a lymphocyte transformation test. So we're looking at white blood cells and how they perform when substances are added. And we know that if these lymphocytes start to proliferate and enlarge, this is the sign of a type 4 allergy. So it's a so-called delayed type 4 allergic reaction. It's not something immediate. It's not like the foods that we eat and immediately get a rash or swelling, but it's something that can happen maybe a day later, which means quite often you don't connect the exposure to your symptoms. So this is
Hmm.
how MELISA actually started at Astra. And then one day, so they actually implemented the test. And one day, one of Vera's colleagues, who was a dermatologist, came to Vera and she said, your test, I was wondering if it can have any other applications. I have all these people coming to me saying they're being poisoned by their amalgam fillings. And they say they get the fillings and they start getting new symptoms. And I don't know what to make of them because I'm a dermatologist. I can put metals on the skin and measure a reactivity, but we know that
Hmm.
mercury is a very toxic substance. So if there is a red rash, swelling, maybe it's just a toxic reaction, maybe it's not allergy. So wouldn't it be better if we instead exposed these patients to the mercury? We expose their blood to the metals and then measure the reaction because it would be more objective and it would of course not expose the patients to potentially toxic substances. So Vera said, well, I have no idea, I've never thought of this. I have amalgam fillings in my mouth, I'm fine, why would anyone be sick from it? But she tried it, and to her surprise, people with the same amount of amalgam fillings. Some of them would react with this type 4 allergic reaction in the test, and some would have absolutely no reaction. So we have
Hmm.
people with the same exposure, but their immune system is reacting differently. And then, kind of fast forward, they started working together with universities, and they also saw that if you remove the mercury fillings in individuals with a sensitivity on the cellular level that we can measure, the symptoms would improve. And this was later on published, and about 70 to 80% of people with a confirmed immune reactivity through MELISA and exposure who go on to remove the metal they're reacting to. So later on, we see it's not just mercury, it can be other
Hmm.
metals, but it sort of started with mercury. So we all know that mercury is not good for humans, but if you do have, 10, 12 amalgam fillings, it's not everyone can afford going to have fillings replaced and removed. And of course, it has to be done very carefully. So
Hmm.
MELISA is a test that can tell you if you have a sensitivity, and if you have symptoms, then in the majority of cases, symptoms will actually lessen when the offending metal is removed. So this is how
Okay.
it all started, and then of course we're now using MELISA testing for many other metals. Hopefully, amalgam fillings are not used as much as they used to be. The sort of 20, 30 years ago in Sweden, for example, it's not used at all.
Hmm.
But the rest of the world has a lot of catching up to do.
And there is a lot of laboratory like yours
Yeah.
in the world.
So we license the test to laboratories. It
Okay.
because blood samples normally have to be sent to the lab. We want
Very
them.
quickly.
Yes, exactly. So ideally, reaching the lab the next day or within 2 days. So in Switzerland, we're very happy that if a doctor or dentist prescribes the test, the patient does not have to pay anything. So it's covered by public and private insurance. So obviously, we
Hmm.
want to make the test as available to those who need it as possible. So
Yeah.
definitely the best way I think to use it is if you have multiple metal exposures, you might have amalgam fillings, you might have gold crowns, bridges, maybe a titanium implant, and to be honest, our point of view is that no metal, ideally, but people who have a lot of metal exposure and they're worried about metal allergy, they can test a range of metals. So metals and gold crowns is definitely not just gold; it's an alloy of metals. And then
Hmm.
perhaps the test will show that the body is reacting to nickel, and the gold crown is actually 30% nickel. So let's just remove the gold crown and see what happens. So you don't necessarily have to take all the metals out, but you can see where you would get the best effect by removing what
Yeah.
metals.
Yeah, yeah, because it's very interesting what you said. Because in my work as a nutritionist, we are talking about sensitivity. Because, like you
Mm,
said, you can have 10 amalgams in your mouth and
mm,
not you don't have health issues, and someone had just one and it's just broke.
yes,
And
absolutely.
the good things to do with this test, I think, it's really to ask the patients to see about his immune system, because it will
Mhm,
give him a level of
yes,
hypersensitivity. And I
yes.
really appreciate that your mother and what you do with your team today are really the leaders on this field, to show that we need to have this test to make a good job.
Yes, and I think definitely it's very important for us to work together in a network. So the testing in itself will not help you. Unfortunately, it's not like if you have a gluten
Yeah.
allergy, you need to avoid gluten. That's very easy. You can do it on your own. But if you have a sensitivity to metals in your dental fillings or crowns, you need to work together with a very good dentist who can safely remove it, and of course know what material to use. You need to work with nutritionists and people to help the body detoxify. So when we organize our conferences, we always make sure we have lectures
Hmm.
from orthopedic surgeons, dentists, nutritionists. So it really is a sort of joint effort. You really need to have a very holistic view of the patients, and you need to work together with medical colleagues with the same sort of mindset and support each other. So this is always our goal,
Yeah, I have
to
two
have a strong.
questions. Yeah, I have two more questions. It's how you was involved. what is your background, and how you was involved in this lab? And my second question is also that on the medical field, and since all those years that you're working on this topic, do you see an evolutions in the medical authorities concerning this heavy metal hot topic?
Absolutely. So I will start with the second question first because it's got the most interesting answer. So um, there has definitely been a wider understanding for metal hypersensitivities, definitely. So here in the United Kingdom, we have the National Health Service, the NHS. Um, it has policy documents saying that if patients require knee implants, for example, and they have a confirmed nickel allergy, they don't say how you confirm the nickel allergy, but if they have a confirmed nickel allergy, they are entitled to get a hypoallergic knee. So they will get a knee implant which does not contain nickel. So for us,
Hmm.
that's a big revolution because that did not usually have been the case. We have had
Well
yeah,
done.
it's nothing to us, but we have had many, many, many clients in the past, women usually who know they have a nickel allergy because when they wear cheap jewelry, um, they get an itch on their skin or
Exact.
swelling. They know they can't tolerate nickel, so they know it. They don't wear it, and they know it, and they go to the dentist or they go to the surgeon. They don't ask, do you have a known nickel allergy? And they will give them a dental crown or even worse, a knee implant with contains nickel. And immediately these women get symptoms, rashes, sometimes they can have depression, um, pain, whole range of symptoms. And the sad thing is that nickel allergy and nickel present in these implants is not something that's widely known. So usually after quite a long time, they will find our website, they will have a test. We will say, you're allergic to nickel. They say, yes, I know I'm allergic to nickel, but nobody ever asked me. Luckily, when they go back to the surgeons, they would quite often recognize that if you have a nickel allergy, you should not be exposed
Hmm.
to nickel containing dental alloys and implants, and they will be removed. And again, what's really nice to see, it just shows you the body's sort of remarkable ability to heal and regenerate if you give it the chance. So when these implants are removed, quite often the symptoms will go away. So it really is about identifying what's causing a chronic inflammation in the body and stopping the exposure or replacing it. So it's definitely more recognition here. And what also happened in 2000, oh, I'm trying to think now, 2019, I believe 2018, we traveled, me and my colleagues traveled to the FDA in America. So they did have a public hearing, and they called it to immune responses to medical devices. So they are now aware that medical devices, i.e. different implants, they do corrode and they release metal ions. And they know that some people will have immune reactivity to these metal ions, which would then lead to these very strange symptoms that quite often doctors can't diagnose, and they certainly can't treat. So FDA was really saying, we know that we don't know about this, and we need
Hmm.
to take in information. What's the best test? What's the best treatment? What's the best materials we can use? And they had a public hearing about this, and we were very excited to go there and present MELISA. What then happened, of course, was COVID. So everything which was starting to open up, starting to happen, was kind of put on hold. So we're quite disappointed, but they have released more policy documents, and we think it's coming. The other thing which we raised, which they have really taken to heart, is that when you get an implant, quite often it's very difficult to find out what's in the implant. You
Exact.
know, they're
Hmm.
easier to find out what's in your sandwich than what's in an implant that's going to be put in your body
Yeah.
permanently. So again, they have changed the regulations and they've started to put more labeling on the implants, actually saying what metals are in them. And this is going to be more and more happening now. So we're very happy about
Yes.
that. So
Yeah.
I would say it's moving forward slowly. And of course, before metals are sort of stopped use, there has to be good alternatives. So especially when it comes to spinal implants, what other materials are you going to use if you're not using metal? So this is
Hmm.
where development of new implants and the kind of technology is really, really important. But I do I am optimistic, but it's moving very slow, but it's moving in the right direction,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, so people are going to know you better, looking about your background, but we can jump on other question. Um, uh,
Yes.
During all those years and those experts that you had in your team and relations, what are the symptoms that you see vanished after allergic metal removed?
Yeah. So that's a very big question. Very
Mm-hmm.
big question. So there will be, again, I'm just mentioning the things that are published because I think you have to be
Yes.
very careful with anecdotal evidence, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
We do hear a lot, and this is why I'm still in the job, because, and this is actually how I never answered your question, how I got into it. But partly why I got into it is because I was helping my mother, Vera Stayska. My background is not in medicine, not in science, but I was helping her out, and I would quite often, you know, help her as a student during the summer, and I answered the phone, and there would be someone at the end of the line saying, "Your mother saved my life," and I just kept on hearing these stories
Mm,
that, thanks to the information your
wow.
association has provided us, um, I've got my life back, or
Wow.
my daughter has her life back, and I just felt if I can make that difference, you know, even to one person, it's worth it. And this has really
Mm-hmm.
been coming back over and over again, that we provide information and we provide material that patients, which really nobody else is helping at the moment, they can take it, they can go to the dentist, they can go to the GP surgeon and say, look, this metal allergy, it really exists. Again, sometimes they will contact us and they would say, my surgeon doesn't believe in metal allergy. And we say, you know, believe, you can do that in church. Look at these publications. We are not the only ones saying this is an
Mm-hmm.
issue. There are lots of publications, there's lots of studies, more coming all the time, and you need to take this seriously. It may not be very frequent. You know, everyone's got metal exposure. Not everyone has immune diseases, chronic fatigue, although of course we are not the healthiest of
Exactly.
populations in general. But it's something which is worth being considered, at least, because the nice thing is if you can diagnose it, you can really do something about it. So this is kind of how I got into it. It was not my plan. My plan was to go into journalism. Was not going to get involved with my mother's company, but I almost felt I had no issue and no choice because it was such an important thing to do. And my mother was this typical sort of crazy scientist, so she had lots of ideas, but she couldn't do a website, she couldn't do a brochure. So I came in to just make the information more available and more sort of shareable. So I had to do
Mm-hmm.
the practical, boring things. But definitely back to the symptoms. So we have seen arthritis, for example, disappear. So again, we had a doctor who was very surprised that he developed arthritis because he said not in my family.
Mm-hmm.
He had wires, metal wires, put into his chest, and he developed arthritis. He was reacting in MELISA to actually every metal which was present in the alloy. They removed the wires, and his arthritis disappeared. And he was very surprised because he was a medical doctor, and he said, you know, you can't be cured from arthritis. Chronic fatigue, definitely, which
Chronic
is a
fatigue, yeah.
very,
Common.
very big. But again, it's you have to be careful because you talk to people and you say, do you have metal exposure? And they say, no, I have absolutely no feelings, nothing. And you have to keep asking questions because people sometimes forget. So in this case, which was published, the lady had orthodontic treatment. So she had
Mm-hmm.
braces. Quite often when the braces are removed, they leave a little wire behind the teeth to keep the teeth in place. So she had a tiny, tiny stainless steel wire behind her teeth. So she didn't even think about it. She had chronic fatigue. She couldn't work. It was stainless steel, so it contains nickel. She had a strong
Nickel.
reactivity to MELISA. She removed the wire. The fatigue was gone. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it sounds too easy to be true, but
I know. I
it
know.
really is, especially nickel. So we, what else do we have? Rashes, but I would say the sort of fatigue, the brain fog. We call it flu-like symptoms because you know when you have the flu, you have symptoms of brain fog, fatigue, pain, you have all these symptoms because your immune system is busy fighting off the virus. So an invader, let's call it an invader. And you will keep having those symptoms until the so-called invader is fought off. So until it's gone, the immune system so-called conquer the invader, and you kind of inflammation goes down and your symptoms go away. The problem with something like metal allergy is if you have an implant in your body, which is constantly releasing, say, nickel ions, your body will see the nickel the same way it sees the virus and flu, and it will start trying to fight it off, start conquering it. But of course, if you're being exposed all the time, you will never defeat the invader unless you literally take out
Very
whatever is
interesting.
exposed to you,
Yeah.
or stopping exposure in your environment. But of course, the problem usually is that people have it in their bodies as well.
And
So this is
all those dermatology diseases, there is some links.
yes, definitely. So I think it's, we wouldn't say metal allergy is behind everything, but
Hmm.
quite often people who contact us, they have been through everything else. And they said, I've done all the tests, everything is normal. Doctors can't find anything wrong. The implant has healed nicely. There's no infection. They quite often come to us at the last stage. And again, it's not
Okay.
necessarily, not
Yeah.
always metal allergy. But the nice thing is that if you have exposure and you are reacting in our test, if you remove it, you have a good chance you will improve. The
Yeah.
skin lesions will heal, rash will go away.
Hmm.
Even hair loss, alopecia has been linked to titanium implants. So it really is a wide. Actually, I should have. Let's see. Sorry, I'm not prepared for this, but
Okay.
sorry, I will show you. This is a beautiful article. It just came out recently. It's called A Comprehensive Summary of Disease Variants Implicated in Metal Allergy. And I believe it lists about 50 different diseases to metal allergy, and it's all reference, it's all studies.
Okay. Cool.
And quite
Okay.
often people think metal allergy it's a skin rash.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
this article is talking about and saying how much knowledge gaps there is, that the doctors really don't know about this, but there is
Hmm.
a strong connection to certain diseases, lung disease, gastrointestinal
Wow.
disease, inflammatory syndromes, and it's all referenced and it's all here.
Yeah.
This only came out, I think it was October or something, so it's a very recent article. And this is what's nice, that it
Yeah.
really more
Yeah.
and more is coming.
Perfect. Send me the
So
link that I will put it
I will do that.
under this video on YouTube, so the people
Yeah,
can read that.
yeah.
And thank you for to share this information. And it's amazing how since all those years in well-being and detox and medical field that there is a plenty of solutions, but let's
Mm,
start with something like making metal allergy test, because metal are everywhere, mercury are everywhere,
yes.
and I
Yeah,
think that for all those doctors and therapists, then it would be perfect that okay, we just start doing that, because if you don't do this job, you're going to miss a lot of stuff, a lot of
yeah,
information, and the patient will never know during all this life that it just came from just one
yeah.
little things
You're
under
right.
the teeth,
You're right.
So mm,
I think you're right, and I think quite often they just don't think about it, as you say. It's just never sort of occurred to them. And quite often when we talk, and so quite often, for example, they contact us and they say my symptoms started after this titanium implant, and we always say, what other metals do you have in your body? Because you don't want to take out the titanium implant necessarily. But
yeah.
maybe you have some gold crowns, and maybe the
Hmm.
addition of titanium means there is increased corrosion of the existing gold crowns.
Galvanism,
So
yeah.
we always try to kind of open up and say, what is easier to remove? Don't try not to take out your titanium implant. Unfortunately, I think there is so much we just don't know. There's so many studies that still need to be done. But I just think taking a very holistic view of your exposure, and also I was going to say we do have a questionnaire that will go through common symptoms of metal allergy and also ask about exposure. So if somebody really has absolutely no metal exposure, there's no point in doing
I want this
metal.
questionnaire.
So,
You will send it to me.
you need to select the patients which really would
Mm,
benefit from it and whether it's something you could do. Or somebody says, I had my fillings out 10 years ago, and you think there's probably
yeah.
no point in testing, because we're looking at the best way to use the test is if you have ongoing exposure at the moment and you have symptoms which you suspect are caused by the metal exposure. So this is the best thing, not like I had an implant 10 years ago and removed it. It's we're looking at here and now,
Mm.
really.
Yeah, this
So
is
this
great.
is
This
this
is
is
great.
testing.
Yeah. And
Um,
coming back on the mercury stuff,
mhm.
can you confirm that when people are intoxicated by mercury, they have more metal allergy? Or there, I think there is a link, because I remember when Boyd was my teacher, and after that, all the studies I made and all the testimonial that mercury breaks a lot of physiologist um, um, you know, things in the allergy system. And so, can
Yeah.
you confirm that?
Well, the way I would say it is definitely an increase in the amount of exposure. Um, so you definitely need to have exposure, first of all, to have a sensitivity. You
Okay.
cannot be hypersensitive to something you have never been exposed to. So you definitely need to have the exposure. And I do believe that the increased exposure will also increase the risk of
Hmm.
hypersensitivity reaction. So how it works exactly biochemically, I
Hmm.
don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's some very nice articles that's coming out now, which is looking at the genes and what genes that give you hypersensitivity reactions. So
Okay.
it would be very interesting to see, for example, if they are affected, if they may be switched on by mercury exposure, and then maybe you become hypersensitive. It'd be very interesting. But we know in the laboratory, you can breed mice, and you know what their genes are like. And if you expose them to mercury, it's very interesting, because different genetic mice will react in a different way. So some mice will have absolutely no reactivity to mercury exposure. Other mice will have skin reactions.
Hmm.
Third, mice will get autoimmune reactions, and this is really nice. But we are not at the stage yet where we can look at the genes. So we have to look at these biomarkers. So this is what MELISA testing is, looking at the biomarkers
Yeah.
for metal hypersensitivity. But I think Boyd Haley is definitely the mercury expert
Oh, yeah.
here. So I'm not going to argue with him.
Yeah.
But definitely more exposure will lead to a higher
Yeah.
risk of sensitivity. So
Yeah.
definitely, if you're working in a factory, in a metal industry, you should probably be quite careful. And again, trying to limit. This is what I always say. We can't really. I'm not medically trained. I can't give medical advice, but try to limit metals where it's not necessarily. So
Yeah.
if there is a metal-free, safe alternative like ceramic fillings, composite fillings,
Yeah.
trying to go for the metal-free alternative. And then if you one day need an implant, which is not possible to get
Hmm.
metal-free, then hopefully your immune system will not be overloaded.
Yeah, okay. So because I'm working with a Rhône Dental Clinic. It's a
Mhm.
very good clinic in Geneva, making some safe deposit. And Dr. Gachet, that was also invited in my show a few weeks ago, is really involved in this metal allergy. But do you think that every patient before having implants should make those tests? I think yes.
That's a very
It's a
good
big
question.
yes.
It's a very good
Yeah.
question. So I know some labs say definitely yes, they should do
Hmm.
that. I'm a little bit concerned because, as I said, the test is best done if you have ongoing exposure. 'Cause I think the immune reactivity will change
Ah, yes. Okay, I
before
understand.
and after. Do you see
Yeah,
what
but
I mean?
After implants, it's quite complicated.
It's quite complicated. So what we say, we always have a disclaimer saying, pre-testing, you need to be aware. So there's a few things why pre-testing is still a good idea, because if you have a nickel sensitivity, for example, a strong nickel sensitivity, you need to be careful because there are studies showing that titanium implants may contain traces of nickel. So even if it's not added into the alloy at the production, it may be there as part of the production process. So
Okay.
there's studies on that saying there's traces of nickel. So again, we don't know. As somebody with a really strong nickel allergy who gets a titanium implant with traces of nickel, is this going to cause issues or not? We don't know. The studies haven't been done, but it's something to be aware of. The other thing is that titanium is very frequent in our environment. So we're exposed to titanium dioxide. Titanium nanoparticles are added to food, for example, to make it whiter, to milk to make it whiter, to cream cheese. This is it again,
it's
it's
titan.
not
Exact. Oxide de titane. Yeah.
We are very happy. France was the first country to ban titanium as an additive to food because they said that had the genotoxic effects. And this was then incorporated by the EU. Of course, Britain is not EU anymore, so we're going to miss out on that. But titanium is in our environment. It's in sun creams, it's in cosmetics, it's in toothpaste. So if you are testing before a titanium implant, you are probably exposed to titanium dioxide. And if you have an issue with titanium, it should show up with the test.
Okay.
But of course, if you get an implant, the exposure will probably be higher and it will be constant. So
just a thought. Is it possible, perhaps, before making this test and to see, because I understand that you need to be exposed and to have a very validate good result on this test. Is it possible to swallow like titanium or nickel, during, I don't know, one day or 1 week, and after that making the test?
I see what
There
you
is
mean.
some stuff like that?
And no, we don't recommend it. I presume because some of them will be very sensitive. So this is what people say to us about patch testing. So when they go to patch testing, they say, I did a patch test and I was so sick after it. So this is again why MELISA is a nice alternative to patch testing, because patch testing can sensitize you, so you get exposed, then you become allergic. So the nice thing about MELISA is you're not exposed to these metals. But I think there are certain situations where MELISA is better used as a test. As I was saying, if you have ongoing exposure and you have symptoms, that's the perfect situation. And then maybe other times you can use MELISA and maybe the situation is not as perfect, like pre-testing. It might still be helpful, but I would not say it's a perfect test for that.
Okay.
And I think the immune system is changing all the time. So if you increase the stress, if you have worse nutrition, there's so many things which will affect the immune system. If you have a viral infection, if you have, for example, if you have hay fever in spring, sometimes you can start having an allergy to cats at the moment. And then when the hay fever season is over, your immune system will tolerate cats. So sometimes if it's an overload, your immune system will change.
Okay, great. And what is the future of MELISA Lab? There is other tests are coming. If you can share official stuff, what is the future of
I think
your lab?
what we would love to do is to develop testing for the new orthopedic materials. So hopefully there will be a shift away from cobalt chrome. We would like to see a shift away from titanium, but maybe not yet. But there are new plastics that we hear people reacting to or thinking they're reacting to. So bone cements. So definitely, we also do test for certain food proteins like gluten, casein, and I would love to see some studies where this is validated. So at the moment, metals, is validated, is published. For the food allergens, I know labs test for them, and there are doctors who find the testing very useful, but we just don't have the publications at the moment. So I would like to see more, definitely more substances being tested for.
Okay,
but that's nice.
Yeah,
you can add, you can develop as it goes on.
Okay. And there is events, conference are coming in the next few months because now COVID is behind
Yeah,
us.
now COVID is
So,
gone. I
so,
know, I know.
can you
Yeah,
share
yeah.
with us, I
I
don't
think
know,
COVID's,
some
yeah,
conference or so that you are
yeah,
going to be present?
yeah, yeah. So can't think of any at the moment, but I think it's time for us to go to America maybe. So we have some
Okay,
very good contacts with. I think one of our very good colleagues, Dr. Scott Schroeder. I suggested him as a guest for
exact.
your
I will love
podcast.
to have him. Yeah.
He is absolutely incredible, and he can tell you again. But he's been working on a article or a book. He's quite secretive, but he's working on it a long time. He's removed implants from over 1,000 patients, and
Wow.
he can tell you incredible stories. Um, they tell him after removal of metals. He's a foot surgeon, so of course removing metals from the feet is quite easy. Usually the bones heal and you can remove the
Yeah.
metal, but he can
Yeah.
then see the results, and he's an incredible guy. So
Yeah.
definitely, and again, I think it's important to say that what MELISA measures and metal sensitivity is just one way that metals can affect the body. So
Okay.
just because your immune system is not reacting to mercury, it doesn't mean that mercury is good for you, of course. It just means that you're not having a type 4 hypersensitivity reaction, but you might have toxic effects. If
Hmm.
you have lots of, if you have two different metal alloys, you can have the galvanic effect. So, of course, metals is not just hypersensitivity, it can also lead to other issues in the body. But this is what we specialize in, what we can measure. But he
Okay.
has another part of the story. So I think
Yeah.
he would be an excellent guest for you.
So perhaps we will see you in Switzerland. We will love to have a conference with you guys because we are working with a famous lab in Geneva
Yeah,
called
yeah,
Laboratoire MGD, and
yeah.
so yeah, I think we are going to be more involved with this test in the future because yeah, heavy metals are everywhere,
Mm,
and
yeah.
I think yeah, today people understand that they need to have a look about their immune systems
Mm,
coming from this topic, and it's not just a
yeah.
question about the food, the environment, because it's very close. It's in the mouth, it's in the
It is.
body,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we have a lot of
I
work
think
to
that
do.
health starts in the mouth because it's where you eat, and it's also where if you have potential toxic substances or
Yeah.
allergenic substances, it's not the best.
Okay. Okay. Great.
But it's
Okay.
really nice to work with you. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for inviting me, Nicholas.
Oh
It was
yeah, yeah.
really fun.
I have something in mind, so yeah, I will tell you more in the future. Just send us the link about this paper.
Yes,
I
I
will
will
love
do
to
that.
read it, and for all the followers
Yes.
too. And thank you a lot, Linda. I was really happy having you
Um,
today because I think your job, the story about your mother and your team, wonderful team. Yeah, you are helping people, so I think this is the best things we can do in their life. Huh? So
we do the
thank you a
best we
lot,
can. Thank you very much, me. Thank you so
and
much. Bye.
happy Christmas, and see you
Yes.
next year, I guess. Huh? Okay.
See you next year. Definitely.
Bye
Looking
bye,
forward to
Linda.
it.
Bye.